Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson, and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast aimed at intermediate to advanced level English learners. As I'm sure you already know, a riot broke out in the capital of the USA recently, as Donald Trump supporters invaded the US Congress. In the aftermath, Trump has been removed and banned from numerous social media platforms. On today's episode, we will look at the events of January 6th and then discuss the idea of free speech. Free speech has been a major talking point after the banning of Trump. Do social media sites have the right to ban users because of what they say or believe? But first, why not follow the Thinking in English Instagram, Thinking English Podcast, or link is in the description. It's full of great vocabulary content, and you definitely should look at our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog, for all transcripts and bonus content. Here is today's vocabulary list. As always, the written list is available in the description of the podcast and also on our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog. To evacuate. To evacuate. To evacuate is to move people from a dangerous place to somewhere safe. For example, the police evacuated the village shortly after the explosion. To discredit. To discredit. To cause people to stop respecting someone or believing in an idea of a person. For example, evidence of links with criminals discredited the mayor. To intimidate. To intimidate. To frighten or threaten someone, usually in order to persuade them to do something that you want them to do. For example, they were intimidated into accepting a pay cut by the threat of losing their jobs. To cover. To cover. To report the news about a particular important event. For example, she is covering the American election for BBC television. To excuse. To excuse. This means to forgive someone. For example, we cannot excuse him for these crimes. Freely. Freely. Without being controlled or limited. So, exotic foods are freely available in most supermarkets. To moderate. To moderate. To manage a public discussion. For example, the local TV anchorman is going to moderate the debate. And finally, personality. Personality. A personality is a famous person. For example, the show is hosted by a popular TV personality. There are some moments in history that I think will always be remembered. One such event happened earlier this week. On January 6th, 2021, supporters of US President Donald Trump stormed the US Capitol in an attempt to keep Trump in the White House and overturn the result of November's election. The rioters fought past police and security guards to enter the Capitol building. While shouting and waving Trump and American flags as they marched through the halls of Congress, politicians were temporarily evacuated and forced to hide in self-defense. I was actually watching this occur on the news on my television from the start. I will never forget the BBC breaking news alert informing me that rioters had invaded the building. This is because the Capitol building is one of the symbols of democracy in the Western world. You will notice that I am using the term rioters instead of alternatives like protesters or demonstrators that you might see on other websites or podcasts. This is because of my personal belief that the event in Washington became a riot instead of a democratic protest. After almost 2 months of constantly trying to discredit the results of the election, complaining daily that Biden's victory was the result of fraud, and refusing to accept defeat, the rioters were encouraged by President Trump to come to Washington to protest Congress's formal approval of Biden's victory. Before the protest and eventual riot, Trump held a rally in Washington earlier that morning. At this rally, the president encouraged his supporters to march to the Capitol as soon as the rally finished. However, what followed was what President-elect Joe Biden described as an unprecedented assault on democracy. Trump supporters forced their way into the US Congress, sat in the seats of elected politicians, smashed windows, fought and clashed with police, stole people's private belongings, and tried to intimidate elected members of Congress. While all of this was happening, President Trump remained unusually quiet on Twitter. Apparently, he spent much of the afternoon watching the events on TV. It was only after being asked by his staff that Trump wrote 2 tweets and made a video telling his supporters it was time to go home in peace. But he still said he believed the election had been stolen. He said that he supported their cause. And he actually said that he loved them. Despite this, Congress returned in the evening, with lawmakers speaking out against the protests and promising to finish confirming the Electoral College vote for Biden's election, even if it took all night. As Vice President Mike Pence reopened the Senate, he said to the mob, "You did not win." Lawmakers finished their work before dawn on January 7th, with Pence announcing the total 306 votes for Biden, 232 votes for Trump. I've not gone into too much detail on this event. If you want to know more, there are thousands of articles and news reports out there. You can probably tell I'm not much of a Trump supporter, and I believe that what happened last week was one of the lowest moments in recent US history. This episode was not supposed to be about Donald Trump or US politics. I actually had another idea in mind. Fortunately, this topic I originally planned to cover is actually connected to something that happened just after the Washington riot. I originally planned an episode on free speech. Hours after the event, Twitter, for the first time, blocked Donald Trump's account and demanded that he remove his most recent tweets. These tweets excused violence and threatened to ban him permanently. On January 8th, Twitter went a step further and announced that it was permanently suspending President Trump's account. In fact, other social networks have also banned the president. Facebook has said that Mr. Trump's account will be banned at least until Biden officially becomes president on January 20th. Snapchat, Reddit, and Twitch have also blocked the president's access. Furthermore, Twitter also banned the accounts of Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell, 2 of the president's close advisors. And it promised to do the same for accounts dedicated to the QAnon, a conspiracy theory popular among supporters of Trump. It is not just social media companies that have taken action against the president. For instance, Apple, Amazon, and Google have all banned Parler, a Twitter alternative popular with American right-wingers, from their app stores and services. They stated that some of the rioters had used this app to plan their attacks. What does this mean for free speech? Well, free speech is one of the key ideas behind American democracy. It is a complicated topic, but at its most basic level, free speech is the idea that you should be able to freely say whatever you want, so long as you don't cause physical harm with your words. As I said before, this is the most basic level of free speech. If anyone is interested in knowing more details about this topic, let me know and I'll make an episode looking at some of the different theories behind free speech, such as John Stuart Mill's and the harm principle or the offense principle. Social media companies' decisions to permanently or temporarily suspend Donald Trump's accounts has created a major debate over freedom of speech. Many Republicans have complained about Trump's removal and claimed conservative beliefs and opinions are being censored. The president's son, Donald Trump Jr., said free speech is dead and controlled by leftist overlords. Montana Senator Steve Daines tweeted, "Big tech censoring Trump and the free speech of American citizens is on par with communist countries like China and North Korea." The debate about the role of social media companies in moderating content has been going on for years. Many Republicans claim Twitter's move is against the First Amendment of the US Constitution, which guarantees free speech. They feel that social media companies unfairly censor and control opinions and ideas from right-wing personalities. Often you will hear Republican politicians arguing that these big companies are controlled by liberal people and therefore support liberal politicians. On the other hand, Democrats argued that the company had the legal right to make the decision, which they also said was long overdue. One popular argument is that the US Constitution says the government cannot restrict speech. But social media companies are private companies. In the same way that a restaurant can ban drunk customers, social media companies could be allowed to ban people who break their rules. Although Trump's recent tweets were not actually too bad, people have been asking social media companies to ban Trump for a long time, because he has tweeted some terrible things over the last few years. As he is the president of the USA, these companies have allowed him to keep his account after tweeting things normal users would have been suspended for. However, Donald Trump will no longer be president, and the companies have taken this opportunity to remove his account. So here is today's final thought. There is a famous and often repeated quote that surrounds this topic. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. For example, if you insult someone to their face, they probably won't care about free speech and might just punch you in the face. Just because you have the right to say something to someone does not mean you have the right to be free from the consequences of your speech. Furthermore, just because you are allowed to say what you like does not mean companies have to let you do it on their websites. Just because you are allowed to say whatever you want to me does not mean I have to let you into my house and tell it to my face in my living room. However, these social media companies have become so big, so influential, and so powerful that maybe they cannot be treated like a normal private company. Maybe the idea of free speech needs to be updated for social media. What is your opinion about Twitter banning Trump? Do you think he deserved it? Do you think social media should ban you for what you say? What is your opinion? Thank you for listening to today's episode of Thinking in English. Please share with your friends, check out our social media links in the description, and send us a message. We really appreciate all of your feedback. And if you have any ideas for topics or future podcast guests or any other learning format, please let us know. And please leave me a rating. We're now on Instagram. I'm sure you've already seen it, but go there, check it out. Lots of good content about vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. And Instagram is a great way to contact me. It's Thinking in English Podcast on Instagram, or the link is in the description. Also, all of the transcripts of the podcast are now available on the Thinking in English blog. Vocabulary list, comprehension questions, and all of the articles are there for you to read. That link is also in the description, so please check it out too. Thank you, and see you next time.